Welcome in to It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. I'm Austin. Find me on Twitter at RealBirdLawyer. Here with me, as always, my co-host Taylor at Taylor_Witt on Twitter. What's going on, buddy?
We didn't have time for an intro. We have a big loaded show, and we were worried that if we went too long, that they'd cancel us like they're canceling all the other pods. So we're just gonna keep it as tight as we can.
The pods are dropping like flies out there, but not us. Not us. We are still here, and we will be here until the heat death of the universe, which, who knows? Could be soon. What's going on with our fantasy leagues these days?
We're getting about that time. It's August 9th as we're recording, and we've got this one league in particular. So we're good on our Dynasty League. We're good on our Redraft League. Those are the two that we had last year. We had a relegation, promotion situation. A lot of fun. Everybody's still into them. But the Cutthroat League is fully open every year. It's not you don't, earn your spot. If you want to join, again, we have about half the league from last year that wants to jump back in this year. That's where one team gets cut throughout the year every time they're the lowest on the scoring. It's a lot of fun.
Every
week when it's 16 people playing, which is the most fun. We've done some 8-teamers and you get cut every couple weeks. Still fun. But last year with the pod, we were able to get 16 suckers in with us, and cutting one a week is insane and super fun, and I loved it. So if you're interested in joining our leagues and you're a listener of the show, which if you're hearing this, then you are, we appreciate you listening, and we would love to play fantasy football with you. Let me know. Probably the easiest way would be to DM me on Twitter, Taylor_Witt. The buy-in on the Cutthroat League is usually $25. We haven't solidified that, but it's going to be around that. Maybe 50, something in that range. We don't play for hundreds or anything like that for Cutthroat, but should be a lot of fun. Please let me know if you're interested.
A modest amount, winner take all, and I will point out there were 15 suckers in the league and one winner of the league, which was me. So I just want to tout the fact that I did win the inaugural Cutthroat League, and I have not ever been eliminated in the 16-team Cutthroat team gets eliminated every week format. I was one cut away the week that you got eliminated, and you got cut instead of me. It was really pretty kind of you and generous of you, and I owe you a lot. And then you let me down by losing in the finals of our Dynasty League, which is too bad.
Let myself down a lot more than
you eliminated me. So, it's been fun, and we can't wait to do it again. It's going to be great. We have a great show for you guys. We're brought to you by Fansided. So always check out their great content across the board. Other just, fun stuff like what we're doing here. We're going to get to the next great American Dynasty, which is our nearly completed, at this point, off-season series, recapping every playoff game in the Patrick Mahomes era. But first, training camp's almost over. Preseason has almost started. Chiefs have their first preseason game this weekend in Jacksonville. So rather than our usual news, game preview dealio, we're just going to wrap all of that up into what we're talking about right now with a good friend of the show.
Joining us now on the program for the probably 28th time, I don't know, but a lot. We are super glad to have Dan Harms back into the show. You might know him from his work with RGR Football or the Draft Network. He is a draft scout for both. You can find him on Twitter at InHarmsWay19. Dan Harms, buddy, welcome back to the show.
Oh, man, thank you guys for having me once again. I always love coming here and talking Chiefs with you guys because we've all kind of started at the same area, right? In the same time frame. You guys started working your podcast almost around the same time that I started RGR. So it's like we started in this same area where we get to cover the best team in the NFL, and we've grown to this point. So getting to do this with you guys on a repeated basis is one of the true joys that I have of doing this job.
That is very kind of you to say, Dan, and we have loved having you on here and watching you grow and all the cool projects that you're working on. Can't wait to see the content that you're going to be bringing out during the season. But hey, let's just jump right into it. We're going to start kind of with some training camp takeaways, and I feel like there's no place that we can start other than with the first day of camp. Mahomes rolling left, throwing back across his body, 50 yards downfield to Xavier Worthy. We've seen not necessarily quite that same play, but we've seen a lot of highlight plays, obviously coming out of camp. involving Mahomes and Worthy. Based on what you've seen so far, and we talked to you obviously back around the draft and know a little bit about what to expect from Worthy, but I mean, based on what you're seeing from camp, what are your expectations for him this year and for the offense?
I think the most important thing is that yes, he's going to be a deep threat. Don't get that twisted. He's going to be a deep threat, but he can do a lot more than just all of those things or gimmick plays. You know, like we feel like we look at McCole Hardman and what he's become over the past few years in Kansas City, and people kind of want to pigeonhole the small, fast guy into the McCole Hardman role, where it's been here, you got some deep shots, you got some screens. We're just going to try to get the ball into your hands and see what happens. But he's a far better route runner than he gets credit for. And right now, what we're currently seeing is him going up against Trent McDuffie a fair amount in one-on-ones.
Mhm.
And there's one clip where McDuffie does a fantastic job of kind of stonewalling him at the catch point and going up and knocking it down. But you're going to see a release package where he takes the right hand release. So he's taking it out towards the right hand side, left hand side, if you're looking at it from the point where they're running at the camera, but it's so wide. So right now, what he's learning in camp is how to efficiently transition his releases all the way to going up against some really good NFL corners. And the reason that I was excited for them to be drafted outside of the speed was because they already have a very good working process for their corners. They're going to be physical. They're going to press you. Obviously, yes, there's a clip of him getting pressed to hell because it's going to happen. The same happened to Tyreek Hill. The same happened to all the fast guys in their first year because why? You have to get used to it. It's going to happen. Okay, look
Yeah.
at what Ladarius Sneed and Chet McDuffie were doing to guys last season at the best receivers in football.
Yeah,
That
literally the
absolutely
best player in football, according to the players. Number one in the NFL 100, Tyreek Hill getting eaten alive.
both times, twice. That happened not just in the game, in two separate games where
Right.
L'Jarius Sneed said, "Oh, Tyreek, I'm going to press that ever living hell out of you," and he did. And so, yes, everyone don't freak out. Okay, it happens to everybody, but I love what he's going to bring because last season was hell for Patrick Mahomes and trying to find something to get downfield. He completed 18 targets of 20 or more yards down the field last year out of 63 attempts, the lowest in his entire career. And even if you go back to 2022, they had 28 completions of 63 attempts. Funny that there was the exact same amount of attempts, but hopefully we get to see the efficiency come back with a guy who can actually track the ball over his shoulder. Say hi to MVS for us, everybody who's dropping stuff in Bill's training camp as we speak, I'm sure. But all of that is to say that he's going to open up the middle of the field to let Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce and Hollywood Brown from time to time just feast over the middle of the field because all it's going to take is a couple of those shots where they come down completed to have defenses say, all right, this is different than it was last year or even the year before that. We have to actually respect the deep threats that they are going to trot out there. Otherwise, they're going to be doing what they did in 2018 and 2019, where it's Tyreek Hill just taking everything back for touchdowns. So, yes, he's going to be a great deep threat and add a lot of versatility to the offense with the way that he opens up the field, but he can run routes. This is not a guy who is limited to a schematic advantage or in terms of getting him open the way Andy Reid does with McCole Hardman or even Kadarius Toney to an extent. Okay, like what we've seen from him, where you have to scheme
Sure.
the ball into his hands at times. You can let him learn in the training camp, learn a little bit in the preseason, but he can run routes. So I'm very excited to see what that looks like this season.
And I mean, to your point, I mean, Tyreek Hill came in as as a converted running back, and even Tyreek as a rookie who didn't really know very much about playing the position of wide receiver, we saw him get involved in the offense in a schemed up way, but then, kind of get worked in a little bit more as he was able to pick up some chops. Obviously, Worthy is so far ahead of where Tyreek was coming in as a rookie. And I mean, Tyreek was productive as a rookie, and he was playing with, Alex Smith in an offense that didn't have anywhere near the supporting cast that the Chiefs are going to hopefully have this year. So it's going to be fun. On the other side of the ball, the defensive back rotation has been pretty interesting. It's included obviously all the names we kind of expected. You mentioned McDuffie. Obviously, Jaden Hicks is making splash plays. Justin Reed, we know he'll be doing his thing when he gets back out there. But a guy that maybe I didn't expect to make a huge contribution is Kelvin Joseph. And he's been, I mean, having a really strong camp, it feels like, and at least has been getting some pretty heavy rotation in the defensive backfield. So obviously, second round pick a couple of years ago with the Cowboys. Have you had a chance to watch some of his tape? And what do you think he might bring to the team if he's able to make the roster?
Yeah, this was a little bit again. I think it was more of a head scratching thing when he got drafted that high. Schematically, it makes a lot more sense. He's a bigger guy. He's physical. And he's fast, right? We wanted to see guys in this defense that are big, they're physical, and they're fast. So that way, when you inevitably miss on your jam, you can turn and run and catch up to receivers.
Right.
So when you're selected to a team like the Cowboys, which they have done some interesting things with their corners, to say the least. And you kind of leave them on islands at times, and you don't help them out a ton. But they've had guys like Trevon Diggs come in and be really good in that regard. But also, we've seen Diggs struggle at times when he's left on an island because that wasn't his strength. Like if he would have been drafted to a different system, you might see not just a feast or famine guy, but Kelvin Joseph fits a much better profile in Kansas City because they don't just leave their guys on islands. They funnel to the safeties. They funnel to the middle of the field. You don't see teams have a ton of success throwing deep outside the numbers because of the mix of physicality, speed, and the way they kind of close from their corners to the safeties in the zone and then the different man coverages that they will play. Unless you go back and watch this San Francisco 49ers game, that was the first time you really saw the Chiefs say, okay, we're done with our zone blitzes. We are going to hit man and we're going to be physical and we're going to blitz with man coverage behind it. And they just shut down everyone except Brandon Ayuk, who apparently is very upset because he didn't get targeted in that football game, even though he was open a
Yeah.
lot in that football game. But so that's neither here nor there. But so Kelvin Joseph was a guy who Ryan Tracy, you guys know Ryan, was
Yeah.
very much excited about and saying he could make some splashes coming in to this defense specifically. So I think what we're seeing is a guy that does not profile well for what the Cowboys did, for what the Dolphins were doing. And now, I mean, the Dolphins are going through their another defensive scheme change.
Yeah.
And when you don't have a lot of consistency in a cornerback room with your defensive coordinator and honestly guys that have been able to develop corners, it's going to be hard for young players to stick around. So the
Yeah.
fact that Kelvin Joseph is in Kansas City, one, we know they've been here for a while. Dave Merritt and Steve Spagnuolo have done a fantastic job of developing guys. You see Josh Williams and Jalen Watson, day three picks who have started in the NFL, started in Super Bowls, and played significant roles on this team for the last few years. He comes in, and the Chiefs defensive backs coach Dave Merritt, who is like, this guy's got some talent to him. We like the fact that he's fast and a 128-inch broad jump, athletic, uber athlete kind of guy. You can get something out of him. So honestly, the fact that a guy with this track record and pedigree coming out of Kentucky has the ability to make plays in this defense for guys who were drafted on day three. No offense to Josh Williams and Jalen Watson. It's not all that surprising when you can get athletes in this system that
Mhm.
have that pedigree that were pretty good coming out in terms of what you thought they were going to be. You see them now in a system that does a fantastic job of rotating safeties, rotating in three safeties, playing dime, playing nickel, but keeping everything different for a quarterback to watch, and it leaves less on the plate of a cornerback. Even though Trent McDuffie is already one of the smartest and most accomplished corners in his young career in the NFL, he doesn't have to do a ton in terms of having it all on his plate. Like he's not; these guys don't have to be the end all be all on the island against Jamar Chase and all that stuff and have to cover one on one. They have so much help because the scheme helps them out. And Spags with the defensive front says, hey, just give me 2.5 seconds. That's all I want. That's all I need. If we can get after the quarterback with Chris Jones and everyone else, and whichever guy I decide to blitz, you guys will be just fine. So yeah, I'm excited to see him play in the preseason to see what he's got in this defensive scheme because we haven't seen a ton of clips from him training camp, so I'm excited to be there. Hopefully after this first preseason game so we can see how these guys adjust after that game. But yeah, I'm very excited to see what he does on Saturday.
I love to hear that because I'm not sure if any position coach in the league has a better track record with development than Dave Merritt. I mean, I
True.
honestly,
That's true.
like of every group that I've seen, he just seems to he and Veach and the whole coaching staff there, but Spags and everybody. But like DBs and the Chiefs just work. It just ends up working out for them. And I'm pretty cautiously optimistic about Kelvin Joseph, and I'm glad to hear that you are too. So that brings me to the next question that I wanted to ask you, which is how do you think CD Lamb's going to fit into this new? No, I'm kidding.
Man,
He's pretty disgruntled there in Dallas, but I'm not sure if you saw, but he and Hollywood both changed their profile pictures on Twitter to each other from their time at Oklahoma. So we'll see. We'll see if Brett. That's what I really wanted to ask about was I know backup quarterback is not really a sexy position on
I
any team.
love that you went from CD Lamb to
Yes,
Carson Wentz.
backup.
That's
This
incredible.
is like I entice him with the CD Lamb, and then I pull the rug out, and I'm actually going to ask about Carson. Even when you have like a normal quarterback battle, the backup quarterback, I don't know. But now that the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, obviously I don't know if we've ever had one conversation with you about the backup quarterback situation in camp before at this stage of the game. But I just want to point out Carson Wentz has been making big plays. Backup quarterbacks were big parts of the previous Chiefs playoff runs, and Wentz has been sharp. He's been solid. Do you at least like the idea of having somebody like him back there? Does it do anything more for you than Blaine Gabbert and those guys, or is this just another hopefully we never have to see him situation?
as a known Carson Wentz defender, I am so excited to see him in Kansas City.
Love that.
And you think you're pulling the rug out from under me with the CD Lamb talk, but I'm hyped to talk about Carson Wentz because this is the most excited about a backup quarterback that I could ever imagine actually having outside of the early days before Alex Smith, where we were trying to get Tyler Thigpen on the field because
That's
we
right.
knew he could just run around and throw it down the field. This is
Hell yeah.
along the same lines. And I will always love Matt Moore and Chad Henne for what they accomplished as backups. Matt Moore in those games against Green Bay, against Minnesota, he was fantastic. It was not
Yeah.
his fault that they lost that Green Bay game. Anthony Hitchens,
Yeah.
come on.
Yes.
Um,
Couldn't cover running back in that game literally at all.
but when we think about the different ways that the Chiefs use Patrick Mahomes. I'm not going to say it, okay? We're just going to think it all together at the same time.
Yep.
It's the idea of bringing a guy in who was on track to win MVP before he got hurt in 2017 and 2016. And the track record speaks for itself in terms of the talent, right? Always uber talented guy, wants to make all the different plays, has the athletic ability, and he's been around a while now. He played for Doug Peterson. Where I forget, you guys remind me, where did Doug Peterson come from?
Yep.
I forget.
Right.
He was
Kansas
that's
City
right.
Chiefs
That's right.
offensive
That's right.
coordinator. Yeah.
Offensive coordinator for Andy Reid. So
Yeah.
the fact that he's here, the terminology should be pretty similar. He didn't have to learn a ton of the offense. Obviously, you learn different parts. You learn from Patrick, and the pressure is completely off of him. And all he has to do is go out in camp and just do what he wants to do because the system is pretty similar to what he's played in before, and the talent is already injected into the system itself. So some of the skill sets there that he has do mirror Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, I think the mental acuity for football has far superseded what Carson Wentz has been able to get to, and that's the biggest reason that he's kind of gone downhill since his injury is the mental side has passed him by, reading defenses and stuff like that. So when you're paired with Patrick Mahomes, who again studies and knows the game better than most quarterbacks right now, there may be a few, Matthew Stafford, Dak Prescott, that can really analyze defenses at just a tick higher level, and Patrick's not even 30 yet, so he still has a little bit to get better in that regard. It helps Carson, and so I'm excited to see what he does because preseason, I'm not gonna lie, watching Blaine Gabbert throw the football
Yeah,
down the
right.
field does not
Yeah.
excite me. Chad Henne, it doesn't excite me. Chris Oladokin, good for you, buddy. You don't excite me. This excites me, and I'm a Carson Wentz defender. I always have been. But I will call a spade when I say the mental stuff has really gotten him in trouble. We saw that in Indian where he just has those times where he's like, am I playing football right now? And he just throws the ball to the other team for no reason at all. And that's going to happen. And I'm okay with that. I live with that reality. But, in break glass in case of emergency situations, you don't have to take the whole playbook out if
Yeah.
Carson Wentz has to go into a football game, which, again, thank you, Chad. You put your health,
Yes.
your body on the line
Yes. Yep.
multiple times to win
That's right.
playoff games.
Big time.
And you should have a statue erected somewhere in the Kansas City heartland. I fully believe this and support this. But when you have to change and go to a less dynamic Alex Smith offense when Patrick Mahomes has to come out of the football game, it's hard to win those games. You have to
Yeah.
play defense essentially. So, and granted, the Chiefs are set up perfectly to do that. So it's nice to have that idea of, if he's got to come into a football game for whatever reason, they don't have to do a ton of changing the offense to make that happen.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that when you look at a backup quarterback, someone like Wentz, you could have much, much, much lower floors at quarterback than Wentz there. So, not the end of the world by any means. Let's shift over to the left tackle battle. One of the few really, really intense camp battles, I think, as far as, just unknown quantity of who's going to start week one. I guess I'll just start off and put it to you like this. Gun to your head, are you expecting Wani Morris to be the week one starter or Kingsley Suamataia?
Kingsley Suamataia has been my expectation since he was drafted, and I have seen, heard, learned nothing to change my opinion of that fact. He's gotten better since the start of camp. There actually on Wednesday he's had multiple one-on-one situations where he shut down the pass rusher. I think he's gotten beat a couple times by Felix, a guy who's a little bit quicker around the edge, as well as George Karlaftis just being a little bit better with his hands right now than I think Kingsley is. But what we're seeing is the Chiefs wanted to trade up to get this guy. They couldn't do it. They were able to still stay in the second round and get him there. And it's going to pay dividends. I still think that he's still got some way to go, but I am 100% expecting him to win that job if he hasn't already and be the
Hmm.
starter day one.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, and obviously, we'll see what the breakdown is. Fortunately, Wanya had a little injury scare the other day, and fortunately, it sounds like he's gonna be okay. But
Yeah.
let's close out this little training camp takeaway segment with Harrison Butker getting a new deal. We didn't do a news segment today, so we're gonna ask you about this, which begs the question, Dan, do you watch tape on kickers? And if so, why is Butker the best kicker in the league?
I
And
do.
if you
I
don't,
watch
do you actually do? You do watch tape kickers. Okay, great.
well,
I
at
love
least
this.
at least Butker. Like I have to watch
Sure, of
Butker tape
course, of
because
course.
I'm fully on board with him being the best kicker in football. Justin Tucker, you've had a fantastic career, buddy.
Amazing
And
run.
if it's
Amazing
and if
run.
it's under 45 yards or at 49 yards, you're probably gonna hit it. But now that you're getting a little bit older, we've seen it get a little bit, I don't know, iffy. There is zero worry in anything that Harrison Butker does when he goes out
On the
there.
field.
It's 50 plus. Yeah, well, we're talking about on the field, right?
Yeah,
We're talking
right.
about tape. We're talking about football tape.
Yes,
Um,
we are.
he's the most clutch kicker in football.
Yeah.
Zero worry. He doesn't have any problems. The only issues he had were the missing some extra points every now and then. And I have been very adamant. I do not care about missing extra points. I have zero care in the world. And then when he was injured, on top of having some problems with the holds with a punter who was no longer in town. And that happened to coincide in the exact same year where he had that ankle injury and they were having problems with the holds. So a lot of people were like, "Oh, I'm not so sure." I don't know, you guys. I don't know about you, but I am totally fine paying for clutch. And if
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about 50-plus yard field goals in the playoffs, setting the Super Bowl record after a rookie did it earlier in the football game, come on.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I know people are like, "Why pay top dollar for a kicker?" You're not paying for the kicker. You're paying for the clutch factor. You are
Yeah.
paying in games that, Patrick Mahomes gets you down to the 28-yard line, the 35-yard line, the 40-yard line with a couple of seconds left in a tie game. You are paying him to go out there and be the clutch kicker that he is. It's not about extra points. It's not about regular season field goals. It is about postseason and legitimate legendary performances in the postseason. They do
I
not win a
loved
Super Bowl last year without Harrison Butker. Zero chance in the world they win that game or any of the other games that they had to without Harrison Butker. You're paying for the clutch factor.
I love to hear that because like the Panthers aren't going to want the most clutch kicker in the league, right? Like
And which
there's
is
plenty of
ironic
teams.
because
Yes, that's why I was
they
thinking
didn't
of
want
them.
him.
Yes, and the Chiefs snagged him. But there are plenty of teams that if you said like, do you want to pay for the most clutch kicker in the league? They'd be like, no, because who knows if we're ever going to be in an opportunity to hit a clutch kick. The Chiefs know that their season's going to come
Exactly.
down to big close games in January and probably February, like that.
And
They know that, so might as
the
well.
thing is too, like I don't I think we I have always I've been trained from the time that I read, Moneyball when I was a teenager, in high school, to sort of push back against this idea of clutch. But like the thing about kicking is that it's such an insular activity, and it really is like you have to you either have it or you don't, and he clearly has it. And the other thing is like you don't know if a guy is going to have it until you see him do it. And
Yeah, Bucker
until
gets on base.
yeah, exactly. Until you see a guy consistently hit in the postseason, and Bucker's done it. I mean, he's what, like second or third now in all-time field goals in the playoffs or something like
Yeah,
that, something insane.
yep.
Yeah.
Uh, until you see a guy do it, you don't know that he can do it. And I mean, you could have a guy, they could have gone out and drafted a guy or brought in a guy as an undrafted free agent and saved, a couple $1 million a year. But like, you don't know if that guy's going to make a 55-yard field goal to win the Super Bowl or, tie the game at the end of 13 seconds when you've gotten into field goal range. Like you just don't know. And with Bucker, so yeah, I think it's a great little deal for the Chiefs and for Bucker. Let's spin forward, Dan, to the football game that's going to be played on Saturday. We're recording this on Thursday night, so we are 3 days away from the Chiefs preseason opener at Jacksonville. And I just am going to start with the obvious one here. What player or players are you most excited to watch on Saturday when the Chiefs head down to Jacksonville to take on the Jacks?
I can't believe that we're here already. My
Right.
God, we
I know
just
it's
covered
crazy.
this
It is.
draft. I was just on your guys' show talking about draft picks.
Yep.
I swear. And
Yep.
so here we
You were.
are. And it's already August 8th right now. And the fact
It's
that we get to
crazy.
watch training camp, I mean, yes, I watched a little bit of the Patriots and Panthers
I'll be honest, I
disgusting
did
football
too.
game.
I did too.
Um,
Me too.
I got to see a little bit of fun. There were some fun things that happened only on the Patriots side because the Carolina Panthers are legitimately the worst roster in football.
It's just
Um,
awful.
and I feel really bad for Carolina, but we get to watch the Chiefs come out there. And yes, Andy Reid says they'll get about a quarter football. We know that's about 2 drives if they
Yep.
get
Yep.
2 drives in the first quarter. So that means we get a couple of opportunities. And again, I believe Kingsley Suamataia is going to be the starter in that first 1-2 series that they get. But on the offensive side, sticking over there really quick, I have a really good idea of what the top players are. The one guy that I desperately need to see get reps with the first team is Deneric Prince because he's
Hmm.
been running a lot with the first team. And we know that the Chiefs have a lot of inexperience at running back right now. It's Isaiah Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's it. You have nobody else except for Keontae Ingram, who's played a little bit for the Cardinals. That's it. But you don't really have a ton of proven, legitimate depth. This preseason game will determine if they sign another running back. If Deneric Prince
Hmm.
can get out there and do something, provide, show pass protection, show a little bit of burst with the first team, assuming he gets any reps with them, which I believe he should. And again, in my opinion, he should. You have to find out what you have. Otherwise, you have to bring a running back in. You have to, in my opinion. I don't think you can get away with this Prince, Ingram, Zamet, uh, Bailey, and obviously the crowd favorite Carson Steele, who is listed
Yeah.
as fullback, but we all know he's a running back and he's not going to really be actually listed as a fullback if he makes the team, in my opinion. So I do think that while it's a weird pick for me specifically, Deneric Prince is one of the guys I'm very interested to watch because again, it goes back to what I was just saying. You have to bring in somebody. I don't know who because at this point the running back market is so dried up.
Right.
But if you can't see anything there for this season, you don't have depth at running back. You don't, and you're playing two guys that are injury concerns with Isaiah and Clyde. And no offense to Clyde, now you have a mental concern because maybe he's not going to be ready to play in
Yeah.
one of these games if he has a flare up with this PTSD. I respect everything. The fact that he came out and talked about it when he did not have to, he will always have my respect and support, but you have to plan for that now. And if Derek Prince is next man up and we're seeing nothing here, I'm just saying there's
Yeah.
not a whole lot there. So I know that's a long-winded talk about Deneric Prince, but I know there's a lot of people out there very
I
excited to
love it.
watch him too. But it's weird, but it's him. There's a couple
Sure.
other guys that I'll just quickly mention, just not to get too deep into it. Jared Wiley for sure. Got to see what he's going to do. Hunter Norzad, who is the offensive lineman that was drafted at Penn State this past year, who is now your de facto Nick Allegretti. I said that
Mhm.
when he was drafted. He's getting reps with the ones. It's pretty much set in stone. Mike Caliendo is not good, guys. He's not good. Hunter Norzad can actually play. So him for sure. And one receiver in particular, which is going to make a lot of people happy, is Justin Ross
Uh-huh.
because he's pushing. He's had a really good camp. If you can get a big body receiver on this team that's a very small wide receiver team.
Mm-hmm.
Sky Moore, McCole Hardman,
Mm-hmm.
Kadarius Toney, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, those guys, Nico Remigio, they're all
Yeah.
very small players. So if Frost can make some noise and make this roster on the offensive side, I think that those are the guys that I'm really interested in watching right now.
Love to hear that for sure. Speaking of interesting to watch, anytime football changes something fundamentally about the way the game is played, it's always interesting in the first, couple
Yes.
preseason games to see how that will play out. Of course, I'm talking about the new kickoff rule. The Chiefs told us they pretty much are planning to have Justin Reed, or at least that's what they're gonna try out to do the kick because that's an extra hat on the field to go chase down the ball carrier. We'll see if his consistency is good enough to actually place that ball where they need it to. I actually kind of wonder if they're gonna want to go back to Butker if they feel like Reed. In either case, do you anticipate any other wrinkles besides who's doing the kick as far as what we're going to actually see on Saturday or even in the whole preseason? Like, if you're Toad, do you hold your cards close to to the vest on what the Chiefs are actually going to plan on doing for this play, or do you want to go out there and fire some live bullets, see how these guys react to another team that doesn't know all their ins and outs of their special teams?
Yeah, I'll give you guys a twofold answer with this because I've done a lot of thinking about all of it, to be honest with you. And you have two things playing in because every team is going to be watching every return that takes place this preseason. Every
Mhm.
single, just quality coaches, your special teams coordinators are all going to watch every intricate little thing that happens. So, no, you're not going to show everything because one, you can overload practice squad / end of roster guys with too much information. You're trying to get a
Hmm.
good idea of who's going to be a valuable returner for you that can handle the basic job of catching and running and watching the blocks set up and unfold. You can't honestly get a real evaluation of some of these players like Nico Remigio or whoever you need to is that's going to be receiving that football if you're also adding in wrinkles. You want the
Hmm.
basic information. You want to see what he does when he catches the ball, how he reads those blocks, and can he just get me yards? Or if he can't, why I can't have him on the roster and then also add wrinkles to that later in the season. Can you make the play now? And we'll add those wrinkles later want to hold that in because we know that the Chiefs are a after the bye, really, it's really after November team. Everything that we see that we evaluate, they made changes in December after December 25th last
Mhm.
year. Like they had to and they knew how. So this team knows what it takes to get through that first part of the season. And if they have to make any changes, those will come later in the year where they have enough information back. So this is more than just getting accustomed to the new rule. You're still trying to evaluate these guys. Louis Reese Salmon is also another guy who's going to be evaluated. You think he can handle wrinkles on a return when he doesn't even know how to play football? No,
Right.
you need to be
Right.
able to really justifully get a lot of information back. And the only way to really do that is to keep it vanilla for your benefit when you're watching tape. And so you're not giving a bunch of stuff away on to other teams that are all going to be watching every single thing that every team does, especially the defending back-to-back Super Bowl champion Chiefs
Right.
on kickoff returns.
Yeah, let's circle back to, the real positions. I mean, not that kickoff specialists, returners or not, but let's take quarterback off the table. And this is sort of combining our preseason and our camp takeaways, but taking quarterback off the table because the Chiefs have the best quarterback that's ever lived and ever will live. And they also have Carson Wentz, who you're
That's right.
very excited
Yeah.
about. Who do you think is the Chiefs, or which position group do you think is the Chiefs' strongest position group going into the season, offense or defense?
Oh, strongest, huh? I still think it's the offensive line. I think Kingsley is going to be better than any tackle they've had the past couple of years.
Hmm.
To be quite frank with you guys, at the end of the day, the offensive line, I think Jawan Taylor played much better than he gets credit for, specifically down the stretch for Kansas City. If you get Joe Tooney ramped up enough, I think that the offensive line is best group that they have. They have one of the best interiors in football. But low key, the safety group is like
Mm.
really good. The
I
Hmm.
agree.
safety group is
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
good. And Brian Cook, who has been doing nothing but just ramping
Cooking.
up, and he doesn't look like he's cooking, right? It doesn't look like he's feeling any effects from his injury. I'm I'll be honest with you guys. I'm a little worried about our guy. I'm a big fan of his game, but I'm worried about him in the slot, and that is Chamari Connor. He's not necessarily an NFL nickel. He does not have that change of direction that Trent McDuffie has. And I'm watching wide receiver clips. I'm watching one-on-ones. I'm watching the team drills, and a lot of these catches are being made against this guy in the slot. So I'm a little
Hmm.
worried about him being in the slot. But I think at the end of the day, if he's got to be a safety nickel guy that who can blitz, we've seen that happen. Maybe just be more zone than man. He's definitely up to the task. I'm hoping that he develops a little bit better this season. But Jaden Hicks was a top 50 player on my board, and he's been fantastic. Everything you could want from him, a guy who's big enough to come down and play. I think I actually talked about this on your guys' show where he can be that Dan Sorensen plus. He's
You did.
Yeah,
much better
right.
coverage
Yeah.
player, and he's got the size to be able to play that dime backer that you like. And so he's going to add a lot of different versatility to the defense like Spags likes. Just wait for that after the bye or really after the second or into the second half of the season. So safety is really, really good. And I think the two positions that I would say are top to bottom better than everywhere else on the roster is safety and offensive line.
So let's do the flip side of that, and I think we can take running back off the table here because I
Okay.
think we all agree that
We
that's the
covered
weakest.
that.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
covered that, and I think I mean your point is well made. Like it's a thin group. Obviously Pacheco has had his moments, but I mean he's a seventh round pick, and you're looking at a seventh round pick, Deneric Prince and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who obviously was a first round pick but hasn't played anything like it throughout his career. So let's take running back off the table. Where do you feel like is the weakest position group at this point in time going into the first preseason game?
Oh boy, it's defensive tackle, and it's really not close. I am very worried about everyone not named Chris Jones.
Sure.
Hmm.
They brought back Tershawn Wharton and Derek Nottie on 1-year deals. Nottie just got activated off the pup list. Charles Menahue is not a defensive tackle by any stretch, but he can play inside a little bit if you need him to, but he's injured. Uh, it's not looking great. Neil Farrell, Matt Dickerson. I'm a big fan of Fabian Lovett, but he hasn't done a ton in camp since rookie minicamp. It's a thin group, and there's not a ton helping you there, specifically for the future. It's
Yeah,
Chris Jones.
right.
There's no depth there. Tershawn, again, 1 year deals for Wharton and Noddy, and you have they didn't even address it in the draft, guys. There was not
Yeah,
a defensive tackle drafted when you could make the case that not trading up for Xavier Worthy, who you probably could have gotten him at 32, kept your third round pick and drafted Dwayne Carter, who ended up going to the Bills, who was my defensive tackle too in the class. Okay. It's a very thin defensive tackle group. There's not a ton of talent there outside of Chris Jones. And that worries me quite a bit because, again, we're going to knock on wood. We're not going to say it out loud. But what happens? You guys all know what I'm talking about right now. Don't think you
Mm-hmm.
don't.
Mm-hmm.
What happens? Okay.
yeah,
It's not good. It's bad. It's objectively the worst group in the NFL if that happens. So there's a lot of problem. There's not a lot of talent, and there's not a lot of anything in the for the future outside of Chris Jones. So defensive tackle is very easily the worst position group on the roster. Just taking Chris Jones out of the equation.
yeah. That's fair. So we've covered this a little bit, but I guess like we know that the Chiefs are one of these teams that will actually play guys in the preseason, and that gives guys that maybe are on the roster bubble a little bit of a chance to make a case. And we have seen guys with the big preseason kind of make those final roster spots. I mean, guy like Jody Fortson, or we're talking about Turk Wharton. I mean, not a star, but a guy that, came in as an undrafted free agent, was able to win a spot on the team with a
Yep.
pretty strong preseason a couple years ago. And even a guy like Shane Buechele, who never necessarily made it, onto the game day roster, but was a guy that stuck around in the organization for several years, largely on the back of, preseason play. Do you have any guys that you feel like are kind of on the bubble, sort of these sleeper type players that have a chance if they have a big preseason to maybe make one of those final roster spots?
Yeah, I did mention him. Fabian Lovett is my pick to do so. I think he could be the Derek Nottie takeover, the one guy maybe you have on the roster that can take over for a player that has been around for a little while. I did an entire film room on him because I think he can actually be that. So you guys go check that out on RGR Football if you want to. And I
Absolutely.
mean, the problem for this specific situation is that the Chiefs coming off of two Super Bowl wins, their roster's pretty set, right? Like there's a lot
Right.
of set guys, a lot of depth pieces that are going to be in position to do that. So at the lower spots, defense tackle, like I just mentioned, and running back are really where you're looking at to find some of those. You might get an outside chance at cornerback, but the like Carson Steele is currently, I think, probably on pace to make the roster. Specifically
Yeah.
because if you look at, again, we talked about running back, but if you look at anybody not named Isaiah Pacheco, even Isaiah Pacheco has problems with pass protection, guys. It's not good. But Carson Steele is a thick, big bodied running back, not a fullback. He's better than a fullback. He's more explosive than a fullback. He's a running back. He can be a third down player. He's a good pass protector. He is a good pass catcher. And he has a very good sense of picking up blitzes. Very hard to just plow through. Like he's very thick, very built that way. So he's a guy I'm looking to make runs like that. And honestly, there's a log jam at wide receiver. I don't
Yeah.
see anybody really pushing. I mean, Justin Ross, like we talked about, but was he? I know he was at UDFA, but everyone knows who Justin Ross is. Like that's not
Mm-hmm.
not really all that much of a a concern for me. It's still like I think Cam Jones still makes the roster. He was one of those undrafted free agents last year who ended up, I think, being brought up from the practice squad, or he was on it for a while and he played in that Week 17 game. Unfortunately, getting hurt there. But yeah, that's really the only guys because we talked about this roster being really set with a lot of experience. I don't see a ton of other players having that ability as UDFAs or late round guys to be able to really make it unless a guy like Kamal Hadden starts to really come on in the postseason or in the preseason and make something happen.
Well, in true Dan Harms fashion, you set up the final question beautifully because I was going to ask about Cam Jones and in general the linebackers because they're kind of the last group that we haven't really talked a ton
Yeah.
about. And everyone knows Tranquil, Bolton, and Chenal, three solid starters. But after them, whether it's Cam Jones or Jack Cochran or Cole Christensen, I mean, there's just kind of some random names I feel like after them that aren't certainly as household as the three guys that are going to be getting the majority of the snaps. You talked a little bit about Cam there. Do you see the linebacker group maybe breaking with the 53 as the three starters and one more depth guy at four, or do you think they break with five? Kind of how do you see that position playing out?
Yeah, it's tough back there because again, you don't have a lot of depth, and we saw lots of Jack Cochran last year when we didn't want to, and it
Yeah,
wasn't good. And I think that he's a good special teams player. There's
sure.
a reason that he's been on the roster in training camp, and Cam Jones is the only guy that we've seen that's actually shown life. He showed a lot of life, and it wasn't just because it was week 17 against the Chargers or week 18 against the Chargers, because it was he was making instinctual plays in less than a second. Okay. It was
Yeah.
actually putting film and brains to the field and reaction and showing the athleticism and being what Willie Gay was. Do you think Curtis Jacobs, Jack Cochran, Cole Christensen can do any of that? No. So the fact that he's listed on the third team linebacker group makes absolutely zero sense to me, but that's
Yeah.
the reason you don't trust depth charts from teams ever
Right.
in the preseason at all. So I think they end up sticking with five. I think it'll be Cochran and Jones as that 4 and 5, but it would not shock me if they kept four and tried to jam as many defensive linemen and wide receivers as they possibly could, secondary members, whoever it's going to be in that spot. I'm still leaning on them keeping only 7 or 6 receivers because Andy Reid is like, no, we did this before, we did it last year, it didn't work out. We're not keeping 7, but we'll see. Maybe Andy Reid proves me wrong and he wants to have 7 receivers. But I doubt it. So yeah, I'm more along the lines of keeping Cam Jones and Jack Cochran because you want to have special teams players as well, and you can't ever count on guys always staying healthy. Last year, Tranquil and Bolton got hurt. If that, no, knock on wood, were to happen again,
Yeah.
you don't have
Oof.
anybody. You
No.
don't have anybody. So you have to probably keep 5 just for the sake of being able to sleep at night, to be very honest with you.
Well, once again, if anyone listening to this enjoyed ball knowledge and wants more of that, that's in Harm's Way 19 on Twitter, Dan Harms, buddy. We appreciate your time as always. We know you're heading out to camp here pretty soon, so enjoy that, and hopefully we can catch up with you here soon and talk a little bit more about the best team on the planet.
Always, guys. Thank you guys for having me very much. And if any of the guys, the people that are listening or watching, whatever you're doing, plus this is not watching. This is all just a podcast. My bad.
That's right.
If you're at camp on Monday and Tuesday, feel free to come over, say hi. My daughter will probably talk your ear off and wave at you, but it'll be worth it.
You're just looking for a free babysitter, let's be honest, so that you can
Gotta be
watch
able to
plays
watch
there.
what's going
If
on.
somebody wants to go talk to Dan's daughter so that he can focus on the plays on the
You can
field,
scout.
he can yeah. We love it. Dan, appreciate you coming on. Well, Taylor, let's talk about the next great American dynasty. That's your Kansas City Chiefs. And as I mentioned in the introduction, this project that we've been doing, which has been a ton of fun, has almost wrapped up. I mean, we have 2 games left to talk about, and the game that we're talking about this week is the AFC Championship game that just happened back in January. The Chiefs traveling to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. And man, this was a crazy, I mean, this whole playoff run that we're now getting to put a bow on right before we start off a new playoff run,
There you go.
in the next couple of weeks, was just, it's wild. Like we knew it was wild at the time. We've talked about some of these concepts before, but like Chiefs had to go on the road to beat the Bills. They were able to get that done. Their first road playoff game of the Mahomes era. And now they have to go to Baltimore to take on the number one seeded Ravens, an absolute juggernaut in 2023, fourth in offensive DVOA, first in defensive DVOA, third in special teams DVOA. This was a top 10 all-time team by regular season DVOA, including an utterly dominant performance. I mean, DVOA aside, let me lay this on you. 4 wins over winning teams in December alone. That included beating San Francisco by 2 touchdowns in their house, and it also included beating the Dolphins, who the Chiefs dispatched handily in the first round of the playoffs, 56-19. I mean, they absolutely clowned the Dolphins. And then the week before this game, fresh off of their bye, they go tied into halftime 10-10 with a very good Texans team fighting CJ Stroud's. And they come out of that game with a 34-10 win, which is Lamar Jackson's second career playoff win. Pretty exciting stuff
Good
for him. And you know what? We didn't know it at the time this game was going on, but we were pretty sure that he was going to win his second MVP. I mean, this was, at this point, I don't even know you could get odds on who was going to win the MVP at this point, because it was a foregone conclusion that Lamar was going to win and was going to win his second MVP award almost unanimously. There was one guy that voted for Josh Allen, and I think it was 49 out of 50 voting for Lamar. So here we are. I mean, this is a crazy game, and I can't think of a better way to get into it than the Chief system.
Quick notes: they are not the fighting CJ Strouds; they are the Stroud boys. Let's get that corrected.
That's
one of my all-time favorite team nicknames. And then Lamar, 2 playoff wins. That'd be a pretty quick off-season project if the Ravens were trying to do a last great American dynasty for them. They would have a 2-week project, and then that would be that.
Now, to be clear, how long did ours last? Yes, exactly. We started this in March, April.
A long time ago. We took a couple weeks off, but we are now in 17th game out of 18. Of course, we are doing the Chiefs system on all these games. That's the system that the Chiefs use when they win football games. It is create drama, handle adversity. I don't even need to say them anymore at this point. Everybody knows them. Inspire hope, engage physically, finish strong, and separate entirely. We start out with create drama. And I mean, you laid out a lot there of what the Ravens were going into this game, which, as you said, an absolute juggernaut. Drama here is easy. It's the 6th consecutive AFC Championship game for the Kansas City Chiefs. Just a mind-numbing run they've been on. Their back-to-back road playoff games, including back-to-back games being the underdog in said game, which has been very strange and very funny, and they will tack on a 3rd consecutive one the week after this. Lamar, as you mentioned, between their last game and this game, did win the MVP. They announced it. I wanted to say it was before the AFC Championship, because I remember us talking about MVP of the whole league. We beat that guy too, but maybe that was maybe we did that after the game. But the Ravens were, I think, by most metrics, the best team in football. They were one of the best total DVOA teams ever in the history of football, not just this season. I mean, they were a juggernaut completely. And, you've got other kind of sub drama categories, John Harbaugh versus Andy Reid. John was a protege of Andy's and special teams coordinator and all that stuff. The Ravens were 11-1 in their previous 12 Lamar games. They lost the final game of the year where they started Tyler Huntley, but in general, we're on an absolute heater. You mentioned all the just complete ass kickings that they had of great football teams. They went on the road to Detroit and beat the hell out of them in that year. Yeah. And of course, Detroit, San Francisco was the NFC title game. And so everything was coming up Ravens for a long time in this season. And then I would be remiss if we didn't mention creating drama included Justin Tucker before the game was creating some drama with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. He was trying to kick right into where they were warming up. Of course, there's the viral video of Kelce tossing the tee, and I mean they were getting after it kind of, and just a really funny way to create drama. All that drama is now going to be before this game actually kicks off, but that's enough. That's enough of creating drama for a playoff game of this magnitude, of an AFC Championship game. Just drama left and right.
I'll add too, just on the Lamar aspect of it, it's crazy how we're still talking about the 17 games into our 18 playoff game recap, but like this wasn't like a total pivot point, but like I'll point out at this stage, when this game was taking place, Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs had 2 Super Bowl rings, and Patrick Mahomes had won 2 MVP awards, and
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson had won 2 playoff games total. But
Hmm.
if Lamar Jackson wins this game and Lamar Jackson goes on to beat the Niners again in the Super Bowl, a team that he dominated in the regular season, Lamar Jackson has 2 almost unanimous MVPs. He's
Yeah.
got a Super Bowl win, and he's got a head-to-head win in the playoffs over Patrick Mahomes in their first playoff meeting. So
Right.
while
Right.
it's not, I mean, clearly Mahomes is still ahead, but he's not that much far ahead. I mean, like, at
No.
least at that point, like, the Bengals fans have been trying to tell us for 3 years that Joe Burrow is better than Patrick Mahomes with 1 playoff win over him and
Right.
0 accolades, right? Like,
Right. Right.
this would be a completely different ball game from, the national conversations. And legitimately, I mean,
Yes.
if Lamar had won this game, we would be having a completely different conversation right now about his legacy than the one we're going to have throughout the rest of the Chiefs system.
And we're definitely going to have a conversation about that legacy, but you're absolutely right. Pivot point is, I mean, that's something that Chiefs and Mahomes continually face against Burrow, against Allen, against Lamar. Every time they meet in these big games, you can see what would happen if these games don't go the Chiefs' way, and how these narratives start to form. And Lamar absolutely has one of the best runs of a young quarterback in the Mahomes era. Like, of all the quarterbacks that have come up since Mahomes started in 2018, Lamar's number 2. He's number 2 above Allen. He's number 2 above Burrow. He's got the MVPs, and he's got the dynamic athletic ability and he wins. He wins a lot. That's the one thing that a lot of these other quarterbacks don't have. The Ravens are nasty. And so this is, now the Chiefs have created all that drama, and it's time to handle the adversity. And this was the first time in this game, the first time that the Ravens had allowed 2 touchdowns to open a game by their opponent since week 9 of 2021. So starting off fast against the Ravens is not something that any team had been able to do for about 3 seasons. And that changes in this game. The Chiefs defense forced a 3-and-out on the first Ravens possession and went back-to-back touchdowns. So the Chiefs just came out of the gate in this one ready to roll. They won a playoff game the previous week as the Dogs. They come into this house as the Dogs, and you could tell they were alpha. They were pissed. Opening drive, they had a 4th-and-2 conversion to Kelsey from a spot that I could have seen Reed being a little bit more conservative, especially early in this game, but he decided to go for it. And then just an absolute pill thrown to Travis Kelce for a 19-yard touchdown. Kyle Hamilton, one of the best safeties in the league, one of the best cover safeties in the league, draped all over him. I think I was trying to think when I was recapping this game, if that's not the most impressive from a purely just athletic and the most impressive Mahomes to Kelce touchdown that we've ever seen, if it's not number 1, it's certainly right up there. It was placed perfectly and just showed the Chiefs were going to march down the field and take what they wanted. Ravens get a broken play, bullshit touchdown to Zay Flowers, very similar fashion to the Tyreek Hill touchdown 2 weeks prior. Lamar was almost sacked. He rolls out of it. He finds Zay Flowers streak into the end zone. Whatever. You'll take those. That's not the end of the world. Chiefs answer right back with just a unbelievable big boy ball. 16 play, 4 third downs converted, 9-minute drive that ends with a Pacheco touchdown and a 14-7 advantage. And 3 drives into this game, it's 3 touchdowns total. And wouldn't you know it, there's only 3 points scored the rest of this game. Spoiler alert. But it was a barrage to open it up for handling adversity. It included the unbelievable 3rd down to Trav, where Mahomes danced around, almost a sack, ducked out of it, and kind of flipped one last second to Travis, who had to fully lay out to make the grab. One of their best just catches in general, one of their best hookups that they've ever had. I would say starting off the game with this type of intensity and execution meant that the adversity of the moment was certainly handled.
Yeah, this is a real all-timer handled adversity age for us, just in terms of the stakes of the game, obviously, but to come out and play like they did, I think, like, we talk all the time. I mean, the psychological aspect of this, I never want to overrate it, but like, the Ravens, like you said, had not given up back-to-back touchdowns to open a game since 2021, and so the guys know that. I mean, they might not know that exact stat off the top of their head, and they probably don't, but, like, they
Sure.
know that their defense doesn't get worked like this ever.
Mm-mm.
And so, and they also know that their soon to be 2-time MVP quarterback they know that he's won 2 playoff games, right? Like
Right.
they all know that he hasn't had incredible success in the playoffs. And they also know on the other side that Steve Spagnuolo and the Chiefs defense and Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce have had tremendous success in the playoffs and are the defending Super Bowl champions. And so I think like, the Ravens have been, I mean, that stat really says it all, right? Like they've been a dominant defense historically. I mean, going back 2 decades. And, even in recent history, going back 3, 4, 5 years, they've been really good defensively. But I think like coming out the way that the Chiefs did, it sort of is a way to say, like, hey, like we respect what you did, but it's the playoffs now. And not only is it the playoffs, it's the AFC Championship game. The trip to the Super Bowl is on the line. Whatever you did in the regular season, it doesn't matter for shit. And I think
Yep.
like those 2 plays to Travis in particular,
Mhm.
like that is it's got to be like it doesn't matter that you have Kyle Hamilton, who's probably the best cover safety in the NFL. It doesn't matter that you have Mike McDonald, who has just put together like one of the best performances by a regular season
Yeah.
defense in recent memory. None of that matters because if Mahomes is going to hit Travis Kelce when he literally has Kyle Hamilton like giving him a hug in the
Yeah.
end zone and it's going to go
Yeah.
for a
Draped all
touchdown.
over it.
If Travis is going to like completely freelance and think he's fucked up the play and then come back and Pat's going to do that little, I'm falling over. I'm going to throw a little rainbow in the air and Travis is going to lay
Mhm.
out for it and catch it. Doesn't matter how good your defense was in the regular
No.
season because now
No.
you're playing the Chiefs in the playoffs and it's a
Uh-huh.
completely different ball game and the Chiefs have handled adversity. What are the Ravens going to do?
Yeah, they're gonna cry. I mean, it's a bad situation for any opponent. It reminds me of the old everybody's got to play until you get punched in the mouth, right? Like the
Exactly.
the Ravens are such front runners and they're such bullies in football. I mean, and that's a compliment to the Ravens. They push you around and they out physical you and they get up on you and then that plays into their whole scheme on both ends of the ball. And if you come out and instead of getting bullied you score touchdowns on the first 2 possessions, you've got them thinking and you've got them worried and you've got them on their back foot. And that's exactly where the Chiefs had them. And then it's time to inspire some hope. And the Ravens get the ball back on the next drive after that Chiefs touchdown to go up 14-7. They've got the ball 1st and 10 on their own 36-yard line. And Lamar Jackson gets sacked by Charles Omenihu and George Karlaftis jumps on the fumble. And the Chiefs get the ball back. We've certainly missed Chuck's presence in the Super Bowl the following week. But what a force he is when he's rushing the passer and when he's doing his thing and when it's Menahu and George and Chris Jones. I mean, that defensive line when they were all there and fully healthy, pretty nasty themselves in their own right. And getting to Lamar is not an easy task for anybody fast, for anybody. I mean, he's as slippery as it gets, and he made sure to make it count with the strip. I just felt very inspired at that moment. We had a 7-point lead. We had a close, uh, field there after that turnover. I mean, just talk about the vibes. The vibes were immaculate at that point.
Yeah, they were. And, it really was a bummer that he obviously couldn't play in the Super Bowl because he had come from the Niners and they had, because of Brock Purdy's injury, in part, had fallen short in the NFC Championship game the year before. I don't remember, did the Niners and Lions play before or after us? We were the night game, right?
We knew when we won that we were
Yeah.
playing the Niners.
So, I
Yeah,
mean, he had the opportunity, obviously, to
I
go back and
think.
play his former team in the Super Bowl. I think that's
I
fair.
actually think I'm thinking of the previous time we knew we were going to play the Niners. They all bleed together. All these Super Bowl
Yeah, sure. I
appearances,
mean,
when we knew stuff, it's all just it's all rattling around up there.
who can say really, but the performance by Chuck should not be overlooked. And I mean, like beyond the fact that I obviously desperately want the team to three-peat, like, I mean,
Yes.
it
Yes.
really hurts for a guy to ring chase and then everything to go completely right for him to do that. And for him to get a ring, to be clear, like he does have a
Yes.
Super Bowl ring, but
Yeah.
not to get to set foot on the field in the Super Bowl and actually play the game is tough. But you're right. I mean, like, again, you have to kind of dictate to the Ravens that just going back to your point about how the Ravens are bullies. I mean, you have to dictate to the Ravens how the game is going to be played. And
Correct.
one of the ways that you do that is by letting Lamar know that, like, if he's you want him to be thinking in the pocket. And when Lamar can just sit back there in a clean pocket, he can throw the ball perfectly adequately. And
Mhm.
when Lamar is given running lanes and you pressure him, he can burn you that way. When you muddy up the pocket and you have good contain on the edge, as the Chiefs did in this game, I mean, that's when he really breaks down. And until he wins a game where like he's navigating these muddy pockets and he's able to keep his head under pressure and he's winning these
Good
games,
point.
people are going to have that knock on him. But it all starts with, the guys up front being able to make that happen, and who certainly did.
Yes, he did. Confirmed that we were the first game this time. We have been the nightcap in the championship games many times, but this was one where we did not know our Super Bowl opponent yet, but we did know that we were going to the Super Bowl, and that was fun. We can now get to E, engage physically, and this section of this recap is reserved for the fighting Steve Spagnuolos and the Chief Fence. They were ballers in this game. Baltimore, yes, they had the number one defense in the league, but as you mentioned earlier, they had the number four offense by DVOA. They had the number four offense by points per game. They were the league's number one rushing offense by both DVOA and by yards per game. They absolutely were a complete team, top to bottom. They had no weaknesses other than maybe quarterback, but they had no. I mean, the plan of attack that other teams had against Baltimore was you just got to hope that you've got the GOAT at quarterback on the other end, because otherwise you're probably not going to beat them. And I just want to talk about some of the team stats in this game that the Chiefs held Baltimore to, a team that had been just working people nonstop this year. First downs, 16. The Chiefs came up with 22. Low numbers kind of for both of them. It was kind of a slugfest for both teams. But rushing yards, Baltimore, 16 rushes for 81 yards for the league's number one running team with a quarterback like Lamar. And I mean, they just, as everyone remembers, the criticism of Harbaugh and of the Ravens was that they got away from the running game, that they relied too much on their MVP quarterback to throw the ball to win the game. And that was very evidenced by 20 of 37 passing for 272 yards, one touchdown that was on a broken play, one interception. Their passing offense was not good. Lamar was sacked 4 times in this game, which was a super testament to the Chiefs and staying home and staying in the rush lanes and making sure that Lamar couldn't run all over them. They got home. And then total yards, 336, not great for them, but 3 turnovers for Baltimore, 0 for the Chiefs. And those were big plays, 2 fumbles lost and then a late pick. Penalty yards, Baltimore in general was not very disciplined in this game. 8 penalties for 95 yards. Thank you, Taylor Swift, for the assist there.
Yeah, right. Those checks.
Yeah, they finally cleared it, and it helped a lot. Third down conversions is where the game was won. Baltimore on third down was only 3 of 11. That's a pitiful third down number, especially when you're trying to go to a Super Bowl. It's not going to cut it. The Chiefs were 8 of 18. They were almost 50% on third down. Much, much more efficient, much better there. And time of possession. This is amazing. This is one that even if the Chiefs had won this game, if you had said, all right, it's going to end up like this, but what do you think the time of possession is? I don't know anybody out there that would have said Chiefs 37 and a half minutes, Baltimore 22 and a half minutes. I mean, that is dominance by the Chiefs. That was the biggest thing. So that gets into engaging physically too, just in general, keeping the ball, holding it, being able to get the other team off the field quickly, and then staying on the field as long as you can on offense. A great E performance out of these Chiefs.
Yeah, and really, it is interesting to sort of think back to Baltimore was doing a lot of things schematically. Mike McDonald, who obviously is no longer there, he's the head coach in Seattle now, but how exotic that defense was, but really like not necessarily overwhelming talent up front. And so when you're able to, great linebackers, really good secondary, and, an adequate and exotic deployment on the defensive line. But when your defensive line doesn't have a lot of talent and you're on the field for 37 and a half minutes of an hour-long game, and you're getting bullied by, Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey and all those guys. I mean, who did we have playing left tackle in this game? Was it Big Don? I mean, like
Donovan Smith,
the big bullies. I mean, up there working you in the trenches, like that's not where you want to be if you're the Ravens. And time of possession doesn't matter, but it does explain a lot about this game. I mean, when you see such a disparity like that, I mean, a 15-minute difference in time of possession between one team and the other. And I mean, if you had asked before the game, like if one team's going to have the ball for 37.5 minutes, which team is it going to be? Like, of
Exactly.
course you would say the Ravens. Like, of course you
Yes.
would say that. And
Yes.
it's the exact opposite. And so, yeah, I mean, that's engaging physically. There's no question about that.
Yeah, they were ready to play in this one. F finished strong. Despite the Chiefs scoring 14 of their 17 points in their first two drives, this finished strong. It was mostly the defense, but the offense certainly played a part. I did want to highlight one late first half drive. The Chiefs got the ball back with a minute 46 to go on their own 11-yard line after a Baltimore punt, and they were up 7. And so minute 46, you've got all 3 timeouts, but if you don't get anything done here from your own 11, the Ravens certainly could have gotten this ball back with enough time to go do something. But instead, the Chiefs marched down the field. They used their timeouts well. Shout out Andy Reid there. They get down to they still have from the 34, they have a 52-yard kick. And of course, all you got to do is just trot out Bucker, and a 52-yarder in the playoffs. You kidding me? That's basically an extra point.
Automatic.
And he nails it, and it gives the Chiefs a what I felt a 10-point lead. The difference between a 10 and a 7, not only is it 2 scores, but in the situation like this, it just felt massive. You're up 7, and anything can happen and tie that game up. Any point in that game. Now you're up 17-7 going into half, and you're figuring, oh my God, we're going back to the Super Bowl. So that was finishing the first half strong, and then after both teams kind of go back and forth and they try and get stuff done, they kind of punt back and forth, can't really get much done. The Ravens start to drive, and they get a really, really long 54-yard pass to Zay Flowers on broken coverage again, kind of like the touchdown. Snead didn't play it super well, but then he ended up tackling Zay, and Zay taunted him. And so instead of that ball being on the 10, it was on the 25, but they do end up pushing it back down to the 11. And then on 2nd and 8 from the 9, Lamar, short middle to Zay. He gets all 8 yards, but he needed 9. And L'Jarius Sneed with one of the biggest plays in Chiefs history, offense, defense, special teams, one of the biggest. I mean, it certainly could have sent the Chiefs to the Super Bowl. I think all intents and purposes, it was about a 14-point swing there. Punches the ball out, and the Chiefs get it right back. And that was epitome of finishing strong for this defense. They played till the last blade of grass, and that's what you want to see, because even though the Chiefs bled about 5 minutes off the clock with their next possession, they punted it back. And then the Ravens, once again, they started at their own 1. Tommy Townsend pinned a ball down just as I tweeted that he not very good at pinning the ball deep. He gets the ball down to the 1. So shout out Tommy there. Gonna miss you, bud. But then the Ravens, they march down, and they've got 2nd and 10 from the 25 of the Chiefs with 6 minutes left, down 10. So like, you even get a field goal in this drive, and this game's different. The Chiefs have to come up with something on offense, or else they're going to give the ball back to the Ravens. Instead, they don't get a field goal. They don't get a touchdown. Lamar Jackson passes into triple coverage. Isaiah Likely was down there, but so was Dion Bush and several other Chiefs defenders. And it's a pick, and it's the 3rd turnover of the game after the Lamar strip sack and after the Zay Flowers fumble. So the Zay fumble's huge. It's at the goal line. The Lamar pick here is huge. They're trying to make this game close, and they're at the 25. And then the Lamar strip sack was also big after the Chiefs had scored 2 opening drive touchdowns. So not only did the Chiefs come up with turnovers in this game, but they got them when they counted. They got big turnovers, and that's how you finish strong.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, you mentioned the 10-point lead at halftime. I mean, I don't think we'll ever, as Chiefs fans, as longtime Chiefs fans anyway, that we'll ever feel completely confident with a double-digit halftime lead. But I mean, logically, like in my mind, my heart, not my heart, but my head, like I'm thinking, well, look, if we were down 10, like I'd feel good about that because we've won over and over in that situation. Being up 10, it's like, shoot, they got to score, but then won't we just score? So like if we just score every time they score, they literally can't win the game, and we have
We're
Patrick
good.
Mahomes. So it's like we're good. We're in great
good.
shape.
We're good. We're good.
We're good. We're good. No, I mean the Ravens and Lamar, I don't want to say they're never beating the allegations, but they definitely didn't beat the allegations in this game, because when you're behind by 10 and you have to pass to come back, they couldn't do it. And they had, I mean, obviously the fumble is not Lamar's fault, but the interception into triple coverage is absolutely Lamar's fault. And
One of the worst plays of his career.
I don't want to hear about it being pass interference. The thing about pass interference is that, I mean, I think we talked about this in January. The thing
Yeah.
is, like, if the guy's not going to catch the ball anyway, it's technically not pass interference. And there's three guys down there, and there's one Ravens player, and the ball is not, it's not even like the ball is well placed. It's just not a good throw. And
No.
even if it was technically pass interference, that's not something that should be rewarded. And, kudos to the referees for recognizing that that is not a situation where you throw the flag. So to circle back to my point, if we're ahead and they're 10 points behind and we just score whenever they score, they can't win. But then the Chiefs didn't score. So how did we S in this game?
Well, you have to separate entirely. And in order to do that, the Ravens, after the Chiefs punted again, got the ball back with 5 minutes to go. They get down to the 25 again, same place that the last one was intercepted, and it's 4th and 5. They're down 2 scores. They figure, all right, we're going to kick the field goal here. We're going to go for an onside kick. And oh no, they had all 3 timeouts. So they're going to kick the field goal here, and then they're going to call timeouts and try and hold the Chiefs to another 3 and out. And that was their plan. I don't necessarily disagree with it, but you've got to hold the Chiefs. And so they kicked off, and there was a unnecessary roughness on Roquan Smith on the first play that was absolutely unnecessary roughness. He hit Patrick Mahomes in the helmet. You can't do that. And so they're flagged for 15 there. And then after 2 Chiefs runs for -1 and 2 yards for timeout number 2 and number 3 by Baltimore, now there's 2:19 left. And with no timeouts for the Ravens, but they do have the 2-minute warning, and 3rd and 9 for the Chiefs have to convert this play, and they have to convert it. And of course, all that means is Patrick Mahomes drops back and throws a rainbow to where only Marquez Valdez-Scantling has a chance at it. And he falls backwards, catches the ball going to the ground for 32 yards for his 3rd 30-plus yard completion to MVS over the last 2 weeks, with the 2 in Buffalo, which, of course, is exactly how we all thought the MVS postseason would go. And the Chiefs win the game, and they S entirely.
Sure. I mean, when the game is on the line, if 2023 taught us anything, it is get the ball to Marquez Valdez-Scantling. And, there's just nothing that can go wrong in a late game situation if you just get the ball to that guy. I mean, I can't believe he caught it. And I still can't believe he caught it, but he did catch it. The Chiefs separate entirely. They are going back to the Super Bowl, the second chance in Patrick Mahomes' career to go back-to-back in 6 seasons, which is crazy.
Yes.
Let's do the awards in this game. We have 3 types of awards. We, of course, have our 5-star men. Who, through their play on the field, scream out, "I'm a 5-star man." We have our trash men.
I'm the trash man. I come out, I throw trash all over the ring, and then I start eating garbage.
Who are eating garbage all over the field. And we have our wild cards.
Wild card, bitches! Yeah!
Who are capable of anything. I will kick us off. For my 5-star man, it's got to be Travis Kelce. 11 for 11 targets, 11 catches, 116 yards, and a touchdown in this game. This was vintage Travis Kelce. And of course, we heard the rumors. We heard the rumblings. Is Travis Kelce washed? Is Travis Kelce spending too much time with Taylor Swift? Is Taylor Swift the Yoko Ono who will bring down the Chiefs' hope of going back-to-back? And the answer to that in this game was proven to be an emphatic no. I mean, remember he sat the last game of the regular season with, a dozen or so yards to go to extend
16. Yep.
Yeah, 16 yards to extend his 1,000-yard streak. I mean, already lapping the field in terms of, the longest streak by a tight end in NFL history. Instead of that, he gets another Super Bowl appearance and a chance to play for a 3rd Super Bowl ring and a back-to-back championship. That's 5-star man, Mrs. Taylor Swift.
Could not agree more. He was as vintage as it gets. I mean, one of his all-time best performances just in general in a Hall of Fame career, in a have to have it game on the road, AFC Championship game, best defense in the league. I mean, that's why other teams just get so frustrated with the Chiefs because yeah, they have Patrick Mahomes, but they have Andy Reid and they have Travis Kelce and they have Steve Spagnuolo and Chris Jones. And speaking of Steve, my 5-star man is definitely going to Spags. He just ruined the day of a top 5 offense and ruined it all day long. They had a 1 broken play touchdown. That was their big claim to fame in this whole game. And other than that, the Ravens couldn't do anything. And it was just such a imposing your will in the NFL is hard to do. It is not something that teams generally do. And it's especially hard to do on the road against a team that regularly makes a habit out of imposing their will. Like, of any team to go in and have a defensive performance like this, the Ravens are I would probably draft them 31 out of 31 of the other opponents of like who you would most likely expect the Chiefs to be able to impose their will, and they did it. And Spags is a huge reason why the development of all those guys, in the secondary and on the D line and everywhere. I just can't sing his praises enough. He's the best coordinator on either side of the ball in football, and I love him, and he's my 5-star man.
What's crazy too is that like how do they even get these game plans together so fast? I mean, like we talk about him being
right.
a big, I mean, like obviously they scout playoff teams down the stretch, but like
Sure.
he's still calling games and doing the game plans for the games that the Chiefs are still playing in the regular season. They didn't play the Ravens this year. The Ravens had a new offensive coordinator. So
Right.
you just have to think about like all the work that goes into getting the guys ready to go and getting that game plan in by like Monday or Tuesday. So you have the whole week to kind of practice that. It's crazy. And obviously, Spags has had Lamar's number pretty much throughout his career. But I mean, again, new offense coordinator, new offense, different players. Like it just is so impressive what he was able to do, getting that game plan together and then, getting the players to be able to execute that. Let's go to the trash man. And I'm gonna dust off an old trope of this podcast, and I'm gonna give it to Lamar Jackson, specifically playoff Lamar Jackson, because LOL 2-4 in the playoffs, but these numbers are actually like fairly insane. So regular season, he is a 64.5% passer. In the playoffs, that drops 7% to 57.4%. So a 7-point drop off in completion percentage.
Jeez.
Quarterback rating 98 in the regular season, which is insanely good, especially when you consider what he does as a runner. 75.5 in the playoffs. I mean, we're talking about a 25-point drop-off in playoff quarterback rating.
Boy, he's almost John Elway in the playoffs.
It's crazy. It's crazy. He's not quite that bad, but he's very close.
Most people aren't.
No, that's true. The sack rate, 7.4% in the regular season, which a lot of that has to do with, his first couple of years in particular, he was a sack magnet. He's gotten a lot better at that over the last couple of seasons, but still 7.4%. It's a little bit high, but in the playoffs, 11.8%. 11.8%. And you mentioned it. I mean, he is the most elusive running quarterback in the league. I mean, he's the slipperiest guy that there is. For him to have a 5% gain in his sack rate, I mean, it's crazy. It's just indicative of a guy that, sacks are a quarterback stat. It's indicative of a guy who, I mean, the game is faster and he doesn't speed his game up, right? Like everybody else is playing faster. He's playing, the same speed he is if he's playing the Browns in week 8, the regular season, right? Like it just, you can't do that in the playoffs. Interception rate, 2.1 in the regular season, 3.1 in the playoffs. So that goes up a third. And adjusted net yards per attempt, so that includes losses to sacks, sack yards lost. Adjusted net yards per attempt, 6.8 yards per attempt in the regular season, adjusted and net with sacks in there. In the playoffs, that drops to 4.59 adjusted net yards per attempt. That's bad. It's bad.
Really bad.
It's just not good at all. For reference, let me give you Mahomes' adjusted net yards per attempt. In the playoffs, Mahomes' adjusted net yards per attempt, 7.59. I mean, we're talking about almost double Lamar's number in the playoffs. And in the regular season, by the way, it's 7.76. So, of course, Mahomes is actually almost identically good in the playoffs against the best competition out there.
Of course.
But Lamar Jackson isn't. He wilts. He shrinks. He is bad in the playoffs. He's a choker. And we were talking, and create drama. Lamar wins this game. Lamar goes and wins the Super Bowl. He's being talked in the same breath, and rightfully so, as
Right.
Patrick Mahomes. He
Right.
has 2 MVPs. He's gotten 99 out of 100 MVP votes for his 2 MVP campaigns, and
Yep.
he's got a Super Bowl. And Patrick Mahomes only has one more than him, and he's beaten him head to head. Instead, we're talking about Patrick Mahomes is now the greatest quarterback of all time, and Lamar is a choker, and that's just how it is.
That is just how it is. The moment is too big for Lamar, and I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily it's not uncommon for guys to get in situations like this, and it just doesn't work. 4.59 on his playoff adjusted net yards per attempt. If that were a ranking among 2023 quarterbacks in the regular season, he would have been 41st. So, I mean, that's right between Joshua Dobbs and Jimmy Garoppolo. That's where he would have been.
That's crazy.
And that means that not only were there 32 quarterbacks better than that, but there were 8 backup quarterbacks better than that. I mean, it's not good. And that's his career playoff. That's not one bad playoff game.
Right.
That is every time Lamar steps out on the field during the playoffs, it doesn't work. It doesn't go his way. And all it takes is one deep run, a Super Bowl win. I mean, a lot of people were saying that curse was lifted this year just by making it to the AFC title game, which included one victory the previous year or the previous week. That's it. That's all it took. And people were like, oh, that's the monkey off his back. But like in reality, he needs to show up in the playoffs, not just win the games. He needs to be Lamar, and he hasn't been yet. And yes, I really like that idea for a trash man. I'll go with one of his teammates for trash man. We like to pick on the other teams when we win playoff games. And I'm picking with the guy that I started off with during Create Drama that poked the bear, and that was Justin Tucker. Justin Tucker made a huge mistake. The Chiefs in general don't need motivation, but they sure could use it. They win all the time. And I know that manufactured motivation is real and is something that sometimes the better you are at something, the more manufactured motivation you need to just keep the edge. And some would think that playing in your 6th straight AFC title game as the defending Super Bowl champs and as the team that everyone agrees is the best team in the sport, some might argue that would be kind of hard to get up for games over and over consistently. And what Justin Tucker decided to do by messing with, like, clearly not just like, oh, there was a run in and there was a miscommunication. Like, he was trying to get in their heads, but he got in the wrong. He woke up the wrong motherfucker. That's what it comes down to.
He got in his own head.
He got in his own head. Yes, he and not to mention, since he's the trash man in this game, Harrison Butker nails a 52-yarder at the gun at halftime. Hits 2 field goals in this game and an extra point compared to Tucker's 1 field goal and 1 extra point. I think a lot of people see the writing on the wall that Harrison Butker, if not right now, certainly within the next year or so, is going to be rightfully recognized as the best kicker in the league. And that's not to say that Justin Tucker has not been the GOAT kicker in his career. This is very similar to Mahomes Brady, where Justin Tucker is unbelievable in career, in everything in his career. He's the most accurate kicker. He has the longest field goal in NFL history. He's the guy. But yeah, I don't know if he's the guy anymore. I think Harrison Butker is showing that when the game's on the line, if you're lining up a 52-yarder in the playoffs to make a kick, do you want Justin Tucker over Harrison Butker? I do not.
No, I don't either. And I definitely, if I'm taking a guy to conduct his business, ironically, given who we're talking about, his love of the limelight lately, if I'm picking a guy to not poke the bear, when we're talking about on a football field, give me Harrison Butker. Give me the guy that's locked in and isn't going to do any bozo stuff instead of Justin Tucker. Sorry, Justin, but your time in the sun has passed. The wild card, the guys who are capable of anything, it's really hard to top Deion Bush. He's going to be my pick. He played 3 defensive snaps, and he came up with the interception. I mean, he had to go into the game, obviously, because of the injury, and comes up big with the pick. I think it was his first snap on defense, and then he played 2 more snaps the rest of the way.
And Spags was like, "Get that guy out of there."
Yeah, right, exactly. This guy's our wild card. 3 snaps, 1 pick. That is a wild card performance by Deion Bush. Love that guy.
Yeah, that's a good pick. And I mean that's basically a game sealing interception there.
Yeah,
You've got a
yeah,
10-point lead,
100%.
4 minutes to go. And if he drops that ball, which no one would really fault Dion Bush on his first snap of an AFC
Right,
championship
right.
game for not being ready for the ball. And if he drops that, we things could have been different, but they weren't. And that's a great pick. I'll close this out with my wild card. I'm going to pick Tommy Townsend. He had two really bad punts in this game. He punted a lot. The Chiefs only scored 17 points, but among his punts, he had a 30-yard punt, basically shanked it, and then he had one that the air yards went 40 something, but it was really low, and Devin Duvernay was able to rip off a 21-yard return before the Chiefs even saw him. So it was basically another like sub 30 punt. And I'm sitting there and I tweet like, Tommy Townsend's not very good at pinning, and literally like I'm writing the word pinning and he bounces one at the 5. It lands perfectly at the 1. The Chiefs pin the Ravens back, and that was a big time for that. So Tommy Townsend, capable of anything. I do miss that guy. I like Ariza's chances on this team, but Tommy had swag, man. He had the aura, and 2 bad punts, but he had a down to the 1, so he's my wild card.
I love it. Punters with swag. That's what the Kansas City Chiefs have, because when you're the Kansas City Chiefs and you're about to win another Super Bowl ring next week on this show, you can have punters with swag. Anybody on the team, really. I mean, you got punters,
Correct.
you've got backup tight ends, you've got,
Rugby players.
Kickers with swag, former rugby players with swag, 65-year-old Mormon white head coaches with swag. That just comes with being 3-time Super Bowl champions. We will talk about that next week. We'll also be recapping and discussing the Chiefs' first preseason game against Jacksonville. See you next time. It's always sunny in Chiefs Kingdom.